The vast, endless blue of the ocean stretched beneath my wings, a wearying expanse I had known for decades. My flock was tired, desperate for a reprieve from the constant struggle of the jungle. Then, a speck on the horizon grew into a vision of emerald and gold, an island, untouched, pristine. A collective sigh of relief rustled through our feathers as we descended, our cries echoing not as threats, but as hymns of gratitude for this sanctuary we had stumbled upon, this paradise emerging from the relentless, unforgiving sea we had dared to cross. The air here was different. It lacked the sharp, familiar tang of decay and competition. It was sweet, heavy, with the scent of blooming flowers and ripe fruit. Below, crystal-clear waters teemed with plump, slow-moving fish and plump frogs that croaked obliviously on the shores. There were no shadows of larger predators, no warning shrieks cutting through the air. The young ones, like Kale, immediately began their feast, gorging themselves without a single watchful glance over their shoulders. I should have felt relief, but a deep, instinctual unease coiled in my gut. "This is heaven," Kale exclaimed, his voice muffled by a mouthful of fish. "No hunting, no endless flying, just this." His joy was infectious. The others joined in, their agreement forming a chorus of contentment. The decision was made without a single dissenting voice, except the silent scream in my own mind. Forever. They promised to stay forever. I watched them, their sharp eyes already growing soft with complacency, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean's breeze. This was too easy. Weeks bled into months. The rigorous routines of our old life faded into distant memory. I maintained my patrols, circling the island's perimeter each dawn, my muscles protesting the continued effort. But the others? They stopped. Why fly when everything you need is waddling at your feet? Their powerful wings, once symbols of our freedom and strength, began to atrophy, feathers molting and not being replaced with the same vigor. They became accessories, not tools for survival. I saw the change, a gradual decay masked by full bellies and lazy days. Their claws, once honed to razor-sharp points for tearing and defending, grew dull and soft from disuse. They used them now only for balancing on rocks, not for gripping prey or fighting for territory. Their cries, once fierce and challenging, softened into gentle coos. They were becoming shadows of vultures, caricatures of the proud, resilient creatures we were meant to be. They napped in the sun, utterly vulnerable, and I alone kept watch. A silent sentinel feeling more isolated with each passing day. I tried to warn them. I called a gathering one evening as the sun bled into the sea. "This place is a gilded cage," I rasped, my voice rough from lack of use. "It has made us soft. It has made us weak. We need to return to the jungle, to the struggle. That is where our true strength lies." My words were met with dismissive glances and condescending smiles. Kale merely chuckled, stretching a languid wing. "You are just scared of peace, old one. We are safe here. Why invent dangers?" "Your wings have forgotten the sky," I insisted, a desperate edge cutting into my tone. "Your claws are soft. You have traded your birthright for comfort. What will you do when a real threat finds this place? What will you do when you cannot fly?" The silence that followed was heavier than any I'd known. It was the silence of absolute disbelief. They did not hear a warning. They heard the ramblings of a paranoid elder who could not embrace paradise. Their minds were already closed. The rejection was a physical weight on my back. I looked at their faces, once sharp and alert, now rounded and placid. They were prisoners who loved their chains. I knew then that my words were useless. The lesson would not come from me. It would come from the world, and it would be merciless. That night, under a blanket of indifferent stars, I made my choice. I could not watch the inevitable decay. I would not be here when the bill for this paradise came due. At first light, I prepared to leave. I stretched my aching wings, feeling the familiar pull of muscle and tendon, a feeling they had all forgotten. Kale watched me from his perch, a faint pity in his eyes. "You are making a mistake," he said softly. "You are leaving heaven." I looked at him, my heart breaking for his naivety. "No," I replied, my voice a low whisper. "I am leaving a tomb before the door seals shut." And with a powerful thrust, I launched myself into the sky, alone. The wind caught my feathers, a cold and welcoming slap of reality. I did not look back. I flew towards the horizon, towards the remembered hardships of the mainland. Behind me, the island shrunk to a green jewel, a beautiful lie nestled in the blue vastness. The silence of my solitary flight was deafening, punctuated only by the steady beat of my own wings, a sound that was now a ghost to those I left behind. I flew, carrying the heavy knowledge of what was to come. My life on the mainland was a familiar grind of hunger and survival, but every day my thoughts were pulled back to that island. A gnawing dread was my constant companion. I tried to shake the feeling, to forget them, but I couldn't. Months later, a deep, primal pull I could not ignore drew me back across the ocean. I had to know. I had to see. The journey felt longer, the ocean vaster, as if the island itself was resisting my return, hiding a terrible secret it was not yet ready to reveal. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Long before the island was a visible speck, the wind carried a foul, familiar stench to my nostrils. It was the smell of death, of rot left unchallenged. It was a smell we vultures knew intimately, but this was different. This was concentrated, overwhelming, and it came from my island. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. I pushed my tired wings harder, flying faster than I had in years, driven by a fear I desperately hoped was unfounded. As I drew closer, the pristine green jewel I remembered was gone. The shoreline was littered with broken, white-streaked bones and scattered, torn feathers. The beautiful, calm beaches were churned up, marked with the deep, ominous paw prints of a large predator. The silence was the most deafening sound I had ever heard. There were no contented coos, no arguments over food, no sound of life at all. Just the hollow whistling wind through the trees and the cruel, lapping waves against the red-stained sand. My paradise was a graveyard. I landed on a high, rocky outcrop, my claws scraping against the stone. The scene below was a nightmare painted in visceral detail. Bodies, or what was left of them, were everywhere. My flock, my family, lay broken and ravaged. I saw Kale's distinctive patterning on a wing that was torn clean from its body. A low, guttural moan of utter despair escaped my beak. I had foreseen this, I had warned them, but the reality of the carnage was a physical blow that stole the air from my lungs. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in a state of shock and grief. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible sound reached my ears, a weak, ragged breath. My head snapped around, scanning the devastation below. There, partially hidden beneath the broad leaves of a fern, was a single, trembling survivor. It was one of the younger ones, his body cruelly mauled, one wing bent at a horrifying, unnatural angle. He was clinging to life by the thinnest of threads. I launched myself from the rock and rushed to his side. I knelt beside him, my own heart aching with a pain that mirrored his wounds. "What happened?" I asked, my voice a hoarse, broken whisper that was barely audible. He stirred slightly, his one good eye fluttering open. It took a moment for recognition to dawn in his glazed, pain-filled gaze. A single tear traced a path through the matted feathers on his face. He tried to speak, his voice a cracked and ruined thing, the words bubbling up from a place of unimaginable horror and regret. You were right," he finally managed to rasp. "They came from the sea," he whispered, each word a monumental effort that cost him dearly. "A great wooden beast, a ship. It stayed far out, but a smaller boat came to shore. They released them, sleek, spotted demons that moved like liquid shadow." He shuddered violently, a spasm of pure terror seizing his broken body. "The leopards, they watched us at first. They studied us. They saw we were slow. They saw we couldn't fly. And then they began their game." He closed his eye, reliving the unspeakable horror. "It was a slaughter," he continued, his voice gaining a faint, bitter strength from the memory. "Not a hunt. There was no chase, no struggle. We tried to run, but our legs were weak. We tried to fight, but our claws just slid off their hides. We were toys. They would corner one of us, play with us, bat us around until the screams stopped. A long, painful silence hung between us. Kale, he tried to lead them away. He didn't last long." The young vulture wept openly now, his body shaking. "We forgot how to fly," he cried, the admission tearing from him like a physical thing. "We forgot how to fight. We forgot everything that made us vultures. This place, this comfort, it stole our souls long before the leopards came to steal our lives." He looked at me, his expression a harrowing mix of agony and profound shame. I wish we had listened. I wish we had stayed strong. I wish." His voice failed him then, the words dying in his throat, replaced by a wet, rattling cough. The light in his eye began to fade. I said nothing. There were no words left. No wisdom, no lesson, no "I told you so" that could possibly matter in the face of such absolute devastation. I simply sat there, on the blood-soaked earth, and I held him. I watched the life fade from his eyes until the last, shallow breath left his body, and he grew still in my arms. Above us, the sky was a brilliant, mocking blue, the same sky we had once ruled together. The wind still blew, but it carried no cries of my kind, only the silence of an ended world,